Welcome back, race fans. We are here to talk strategy and Q&A for the United States GP in Austin. Racing is back in America. On the docket this week is the fourth out of 6 sprint races with Brazil and Qatar also coming up towards the end of the season. And sprint races always require a bit of a strategic shift as it relates to your fantasy teams on GridRival, which we plan to discuss today. We're also going to try and leave, at the request of some viewers, more time for Q&A. So we're trying to get through some of the quick overview of driver salary changes, who's underpriced, overpriced, all that in a little bit quicker fashion. So on that note, if you have questions, start filling up the feed right now because we're going to get to them probably a little bit sooner than we planned. But before we kick off, some quick introductions. I'm Ross, co-founder and CEO of GridRival. With me today, I have Mike Ursinoli, our CTO, who will be at the race in person this weekend, and William Laddie, our principal software engineer, and Ryan Booth, our director of business operations. As a quick reminder before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the show. Find us on Discord. And also, we're going to have a daily fantasy contest posted here today or tomorrow for the Austin GP that you should consider joining if you're one of the 25 states in the United States where our game is live. Our paid game is live. Also consider, if you want to spice it up this weekend, have the ability to create a private contest with money where you can invite your friends or other players, anywhere between 2 and 12 players. So anyways, let's get into the details. Singapore was, almost a month ago now. 2 long breaks in a season. I don't know if I can deal with it. We had 9 drivers go up in value, 10 down. Lawson's new to the roster. We're going to talk about that this weekend. Nico Hulkenberg, Calapinto, and Yuki Tsunoda all went up $2 million after the last race. Verstappen up 1.3, Russell up 1.2, as well as Zhou Guan Yu. Lando Norris 1.1, and then Alonso and Ocon both up 800K. Valtteri Bottas up a tiny bit at 300K. And then for the losers of last week, we had Magnussen and Albon with the maximum loss of 2 million. Gasly and Perez down 1.4, Sainz 0.9, Leclerc 0.8, and the ever famous stroller coaster had a dip weekend, down 0.4, and then Piastri and Hamilton down a little bit at 0.2 and 0.1 respectively. Very little movement. I noticed for the first time in probably a while on the constructor side. The largest swing that we saw, positive or negative, was Alpine at only 900K. So very, very little movement on the constructor side. Might be a sign that, things are stabilizing a little bit with a lot of this changes that we've seen with, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull dropping behind a little bit. Time will tell. But let's get into it for this race. United States GP is a sprint weekend. And given the expertise on the panel, I was thinking of maybe Ryan and William giving an overview, not to put you guys on the spot, of the importance of a sprint weekend on GridRival, and strategically speaking, what are the important things to think about. Also considering we are now at a point where a 5-race contract, if I'm not mistaken, will cover all of the next 3 sprint races, USGP, Brazil, and Qatar, which is 5 races away from this race. So I'll hand it off to you. Why don't you guys give the fans an overview?
Well, sorry to interrupt first. Responding to comments in chat, saying our audio is a little crackly. It's definitely coming through clear for me. Can we just do a quick mic check with everyone? We'll all say a few words, and then we'll go around.
Yep, mic check 1, 2, 3.
Mic check 1, 2, 3.
How do I sound? Let me know.
Yeah, how do I sound? Justice for Logan.
Justice for Logan.
That's my mic check.
All right, chat. And a lot from everyone. Interesting. Ross is the worst, but crackle all around. All right.
I wonder if something's going on with Riverside.
Crackling
Not
all
me,
but
apparently
William.
not me.
You know what's funny? William's the only one that doesn't use a professional mic.
Like, this is like $10 earbuds that I got from Amazon.
All right, we're going to do this. Let's do a quick, everyone except Ross mute real quick. Let's just see.
Hold on here.
Try and clean this up for you guys. William, you're the only one not muted. Do a quick sound check.
I'm not muted now. I was muted. How do I sound? Maybe some of you guys should unplug and replug your headphones if they're the plug-in variety. Could be a bad connection, or maybe me as well, apparently. The chat is split. The chat is split on how I sound. I wonder if our streaming platform is doing funny things. I wonder if this is not an us problem, but rather a problem upstream of us or downstream of us.
It's never an us problem.
Everyone's crackling.
I can confidently say that this is someone else's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is a stream problem. But hey, you know what? Maybe we're just going to go AM radio style.
Yeah, we've
while
invested.
While we're filling time, here's what I'll say about Liam Lawson, about the Lawson replacement. We are going to treat him as though he had finished the last 8 races in 17th for the purposes of improvement points. So just know that as you're making a pick. We saw that really matter with Cola Pinto, where he was outperforming the average we gave him. So keep that in mind. Lawson's average is going to be 17th as he takes over Ricardo's seat. And honestly, I think that should have been Lawson's seat last year. I don't think Ricardo ever made sense for that team. AlphaTauri is a junior team, as supposed to be the drivers of tomorrow, not the washed-up drivers from yesteryear. So, yeah, that's my editorialization while we're filling time. Yeah.
Some people are saying we sound good now.
Yeah, it's definitely split opinion.
Yeah. Shout out W. Harden for saying Ryan sounds good. I like getting compliments.
And you should all know.
I switched microphones to my laptop, and now it won't let me switch back. And I don't have a camera. So I think we're just going to have to roll with it.
Yeah. And you should also all know that the first thing I did before we went on air was I critiqued Mike's choice of apparel.
Justice for Logan. We're representing Logan for the Ross is the cause of the echo problem. Sorry about that. He left. It's just us now.
Hopefully
we're going to get back on track
in a moment.
Yeah. If any of you are going to be at the Austin GP, Ross is gone on the chat. Maybe we're delayed a little bit too. I think there's like a stream problem.
It's a few seconds behind.
Yeah. If any of you are going to be at the Austin GP, everyone will get 100 extra bonus points if you spot Ross or I and take a photo with us. I'm just kidding. There's no extra points, but hey, anyone who sees us will be wearing our GridRival merch. Feel free to come up and talk to us. So yeah, we're going to get back on track without Ross. All right. So Austin GP. First, let's actually talk about the sprint aspect of this, right? So first and foremost, the app locks down on Friday. Don't screw that up. If you're in a league, be a good league mate. Tell your league mates that it locks down on Friday so that people don't have empty lineups. And obviously, we do our best with sending out notifications, but still, people have empty lineups for the sprint. And we'll pivot into some sprint strategy. So, for the sprint, just a reminder, drivers get extra points for the sprint. Constructors do not. So common strategy during sprints is going to be to run higher priced drivers or drivers you think will perform better in the sprints to get those extra sprint points and go cheaper on the constructor. And also, we think we have a few sprint races coming up, right, William?
That's right. So let's just go over the remaining schedule for F1 since I can count it on my fingers. We've got Austin, which is a sprint. And we've got Mexico, not a sprint. Brazil, sprint. Vegas, not a sprint. Qatar, sprint. And then Abu Dhabi, not a sprint. Those are our 6 remaining races. So if you sign somebody to 5 races, then you're going to have them for all 3 sprints. You will have them out for Abu Dhabi. If you sign them to any odd number of races, you can have them for all the sprints because if I just take a 1 racer, they're on cooldown for Mexico and I can have them the rest of the way. Anybody you sign now, you have to have them out for 1 race. It's just going to be a matter of which. So, yeah, that's a consideration there. So again, we tend to lean towards drivers when we have sprint weekends. because they will score sprint points. Constructors won't. Sprint points are 20th for first place, down to 1 point for 20th place. So it's not a ton of points, but it is a non-trivial number of points, especially if, say, you have a talent driver that does well, and suddenly like 11 times 2, that's 22 points, which is certainly not a bad haul at all, and they all add up as we get down the home stretch here.
Yep, just to keep it simple, prioritize drivers. You will have more points available to drivers. So if you're between a higher priced driver, higher priced constructor, go with the driver. That is going to be your the quick and dirty sprint recap.
Sweet. Okay. So we are trying to dedicate more time in this session to Q&A. So everyone in the chat, now their audio issues are resolved and we've gotten rid of Ross, get those questions in for strategies, lineups, questions. I think it's a good shift to go right into who we think is underpriced for the Austin GP. Who wants to lead it off with that? Because I know the same person is probably on all three of our minds right now. So I don't want to steal the thunder there. Who wants to kick it off with who we think is underpriced for the Austin GP and a good pickup for this sprint?
I mean, do we just keep saying Colapinto?
I think we keep saying Cola. It's Colapinto and Lawson. I think both. The two newest drivers added to the grid. They were added at relatively low salaries, considering their relative inexperience in F1 and a couple of other reasons. Go ahead, William.
I'm going to say Colapinto until further notice, but I'm not so convinced on Lawson being underpriced. If we look at where he is compared to Yuki Tsunoda, he is like $1 million and change behind Tsunoda. But in terms of valuation, they're 17th and 18th. So if Lawson is going to gain value, he's going to presumably have to beat his teammate, which I'm not sure is a given.
Lawson's also behind the 8 ball with a grid penalty to start this thing off.
I believe the penalty is just for the sprint. But he does have a power unit penalty. And I believe that's for this. Yeah, that's for the sprint. That's not for the actual race, which is an interesting wrinkle with the regulations. This seems like a weekend where you could just take a free power unit then, because who cares about the sprint? Like if you're a backmarker team, like who cares about the sprint, right? What advice for the actual F1 teams? So Colapinto definitely. We only have one practice session to see data, which is also a hesitation that I have with both Colapinto and Lawson. I don't believe either of these drivers have ever run at Austin before. I don't recall if Ricardo raced there last year or if he was still out with the broken hands. But one practice session is not a lot.
No.
It is not. And COTA is I wouldn't say it's a complicated track, but it is a technical track all around. So it would help if they had some more practice before. But hey, the sprint is practice now on a sprint weekend. We trade off 2 free practice sessions for a sprint race. Anyone else on your underpriced list? We've seen. I saw someone say Checo. So right now, Sergio Perez is priced in the app at 18.8 million. He dropped 1.4 million coming out of the last race. Is Checo underpriced?
I think he is, but the problem, other than the main problem being that it's Checo and you never know what you're going to get, he's right above the talent driver threshold. So I don't really want to touch him until he falls below 18. So I guess if you do like Checo, I think you're looking at a longer contract, because if for some reason Austin does not go well, he probably drops into talent driver, at which point he is, I would think, a must sign.
And then going into his home race as well, and very much fighting for his career.
Right, where
to be on the chopping block.
Yeah, he's either going to have a strong race or he's going to send it into turn 1 and like he did the other year. Yeah, but we'll see. But yeah, I wouldn't touch him here just because of that talent driver threshold.
I'll make the case for Checo. He is behind Fernando Alonso right now, and that should never happen. And I do think he was artificially worse at Singapore because Red Bull's expectations were low for Singapore. Honestly, I think it was a miracle that Verstappen finished second there. So considering how trash they were last year.
Yeah.
So like you could lock up Perez for more than one race. Like if you do have him for more than one race, then if he drops below, you can press the star and then you have him as talent driver. But it is a gamble because he is inconsistent. If we're talking about upper tier drivers, Sainz is another consideration. Ferrari has shown pace at times, and so we certainly can't rule out that they might perform well at Austin. Mexico is a low downforce track because of the thin air. We saw how they did with Monza in a low downforce situation. We've got a street horse a few races from now with Vegas. So, there is some potential for Sainz to outperform. And we are running out of chances to lock somebody up at a discount and write it out the rest of the way. So those are my thoughts on underpriced.
And furthering the point of Sainz being underpriced and Checo potentially being underpriced, I think that makes Alonso like unsignable. I don't know. I think you either spend the extra bit to get Sainz or you get a discount with Perez. I don't know why you would want to spend 19.3 on Alonso at this point of the season with where that pricing is right now. I mean, maybe he'll go out and be awesome and make me look an idiot. But yeah, I wouldn't touch him here the way that the prices line up.
Yeah, I'm not like you'd be telling me that he's beating Ferrari and or Mercedes. That's not happening. The Aston Martin is not beating those teams.
Yeah, totally.
Not yet. Not until Adrian Newey gets his hands on it.
Yeah. Let's hit some questions so we get the chat livening up here a bit. So we kind of hit on this one, but Colapinto or Lawson for talent driver, I think, all of us would go for Colapinto. But I will say, despite the 10-place grid penalty for the sprint, I don't think Lawson is a bad choice for a talent driver for the weekend. And just to quickly explain why, it's more so if you could watch free practice one. If you have the time to watch free practice one, and we're seeing some actual data from there and not sandbagging teams and like they're actually putting effort into it, it could be worth a last minute gamble because in my opinion, I think Lawson can outperform Tsunoda. Don't underestimate like how much drivers need to show performance, and Lawson, almost above all else, needs to show performance. So him and Colapinto probably tied in like needing to secure seats for the future and their careers. So I'm really interested to see what a Lawson fighting for his career does.
I don't think that sprint grid penalty is actually going to cost them a lot in the sprint because AlphaTauri realistically is probably about a 15th place car anyway. So like if he finishes 20th, like that's 5 fewer points from 15th. And presumably he could make some passes. He could pass the Saubers. If Alpine is slow, he could pass them. The other case I'll make in favor of Lawson would be the improvement point potential. So I said before, the average is 17th. He could get propped up. His finished position could get propped up by retirements. Like if we have some chaos in front of him, that's a bunch of extra like free finishing positions that he could pick up. And Austin could be chaotic, or it could be all 20 cars finish. Who knows? That said, the Williams is a faster car, so I would probably pick Colapinto if I had to pick between the two of them. I do think there's still some more upside for Colapinto unless we see a bunch of upgrades on Friday. The teams have had a month to work on things for sure.
Yeah. I just think Colapinto is more proven at this point, and I expect the Williams to be a much stronger car. So that's why I would lean towards Colapinto, and I think you just have a lower floor with Lawson. I mean, there is the high ceiling potential that we talked about with improvement points. I think if you're trying to make up points in your league, you're trying to catch somebody, you need to kind of throw a Hail. This isn't really a Hail Mary, but you need to take more of a risk. Maybe shade towards Lawson. If you're in first place trying to hold somebody off and you're just trying to put up points and keep a lead, I would probably stay away from him for that reason. But yeah, I think if you're just looking at it in a vacuum of Colapinto versus Lawson, I think it's Colapinto every time.
Yeah, Williams can score points, Whereas like
they
Toro
can.
Rosso, did I just call them Toro Rosso?
You did just call them Toro
Racing
Rosso.
Bulls. I've been watching
fine.
the sport too long.
No one respects
Uh,
their name anyway. It's fine.
yeah, it was like 2 names ago. Anyway, like they realistically are ahead of Sauber, and they're competing with Alpine, and like they are a lot less likely to be scoring points.
But speaking of the Williams scoring points, fun little trivia question: which F1 driver has scored 100% of his points of his whole career in Austin?
Logan Sargent, baby.
Logan Sargent. Also, don't look that up. I that's just trivia off the top of my head. There may be other people who've done that, but I know for sure Logan did. So don't look up my lazy trivia.
In Austin, you're probably you're probably right in for Austin. Like in the US, there's actually a whole bunch of drivers who scored their only points in the US. And that's because in the 1950s, the Indy 500 counted towards the World Championship. But most of the actual F1 drivers wouldn't show up for that. And the 33 drivers running the Indy 500 wouldn't be running the F1 schedule. So there's actually a whole bunch of drivers who scored their only points in the US.
Let's bring that back. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
I'm not
All right,
opposed, but I don't think that a lot of these drivers care for the ovals.
All right, Jake Vossen. I have Norris, Leclerc, Albon, and Colapinto with Ferrari. 25.2 million left over, and I'm in first place. Hamilton or Sainz for my last driver, and for how long? That's a great question. So Sainz is 22.4 million, and Hamilton's 24.8 million. So for anyone in that position of looking at Sainz or Hamilton, I personally right now would go Sainz. But I wouldn't fault you for going Hamilton. I kind of think you're at a coin flip on that in terms of like the most outright points. It does feel like, though, that there's a little bit higher ceiling for Ferrari on the upcoming tracks, but not by much.
I'm curious when some of these contracts are expiring, because if you wanted to gamble, like you could take Sainz, hope he goes up. Like you could even take Sainz for one and hope he goes up, and hope that maybe Max has trouble. Like you could potentially turn this into Verstappen for the rest of the season if you wanted. Like if you take Sainz and he gains some value.
Yeah, I think you go Sainz just because at this point in the week, I look at them as pretty even. I think you just go Sainz. There's some room for growth. Like you might add a couple million to your team value, which you might need down the stretch. But honestly, it's probably just whoever looks better in FP1. Like they're so similar. I think at this point in the week, just see who looks better, whether it's the Mercedes, the Ferrari, those two drivers individually, and just play that one. It sounds like you've got some money to play with. So, and you're in first. So,
yeah, $131 million total cap. He put in a follow up point. So yeah, I think you also we don't know how much you're in first place by, but you probably can afford to gamble a little bit here with contract length. So I agree with Williams' assessment there. Put a follow-up question in. Let us know how long those contracts are. The chats, get your questions in the chat, everyone. This is the next 5 races is well, the next 6 races till the end of the season, but the next 5 races have 3 sprints. So there should be a lot of Q&A around how to manage this and what driver selections to make. So
and we have a street course.
And we have a street course.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
like that's even a consideration. Like maybe we like Ferrari better on a street course. We want to make sure that we have Ferrari and their drivers available for Vegas, which is 4 races away. So
yeah. These last few races are where you can make or break your whole season. Is, you know, first place can drop to second or third, and third can go to first or second in just a few events, depending on the points that are going on. And also, like, for anyone in last place, you should be really going for advice, because you don't want to have to do whatever your league penalty is for being in last place. Ask us how to get out of last place and get ahead of one person ahead of you, so you don't have to do whatever penalty is in your league. There we go. We got some questions. We got another one. I've got Hulk, Ocon, Gasly, Tsunoda, McLaren. I'm thinking of Sainz because he's relatively cheap right now, but also thinking of taking a relatively cheaper option and saving money for the next race. I have 27.5 million. You Hulk, Ocon, Gasly, Tsunoda, you don't have any blue chip drivers. You're in the midfield for everyone here. So you need to balance that out by taking some higher priced drivers. Like That was Han Plays. Sorry for the mispronunciation. Give some 6th in the league out of 8th. Yeah, but how much money do you have? Because you're running a whole lineup of midfielders right now.
Yeah, like I would. First of all, you have 2 Alpine drivers, and that concerns me a lot because Alpine isn't very good. So, like I would, like honestly, I would exchange one of them for Botas and free up some money, and then I want to go get myself a driver who could actually podium, especially when we have sprints. Like I want probably a Piastri or Verstappen. Um, yeah, I need some drivers who are going to actually produce, especially with sprints being a thing.
You might even
And
consider
you've tied up a lot of
dropping
money with McLaren as well. Could we consider downgrading our constructor and like loading up on the driver's side?
Yeah. So the team value is 103 million. So that's an important piece
Sounds
of context.
about right.
That sounds about right. So maybe, okay, here's what we could do. The chat's pretty light right now, so I think we'll be good on time. Hang through to the end. Maybe we'll put together a $100 million lineup as a DFS lineup. And then whatever we say there will probably be the best lineup you could do as well at 103.
Yeah. Something like it, because he'd be eating some release fees. Like if you start breaking contracts, but
exactly. All right, we'll come back.
It might be worth it.
Yeah, I think it will very much be worth it. All right, Martin, I'm really struggling here. Sorry to hear that. I have Norris, Piastri, Sainz, Albon as my star driver. I'm locked out of Colapinto and have 1 space left for 1 driver and 1 for constructor. 38.995 million left in the bank. Okay.
I don't think you're struggling.
I want
think
your
this is a
struggle.
very strong.
Give me your struggle. I want this problem.
So, all right, 38.995 left. This one's going to be fun. I'm excited for this one. So you already have Norris, Piastri, Sainz, Albon. I'm going to take my take first. My take first is going to be going cheaper on the constructor side, but something that still gives you a decent amount of points. And I'm going to go to Williams for that. I think you could sign Williams for a longer contract right now, assuming that Albon keeps his pace and Colapinto starts bringing the gap up. Williams at 12.8 would leave you a heck of a lot of money left over to pick up another blue chip driver. So let's do some quick math.
That would leave
Hamilton
you with 26-1.
Either Mercedes.
You could swing Russell. I would I like the Williams idea, but I would actually go slightly cheaper. I would go Racing Bulls, and then you could afford Verstappen.
That's exactly right.
Like who is going to be like a solid chance to podium every race the rest of the year. And I have a lot, like Verstappen's a huge step up from Russell.
Yeah.
Like Mercedes can podium. Verstappen very likely will podium. The one risk I see with Verstappen is, this title fight's getting closer. He may get in his head and start colliding with people like in 21, the fight with Hamilton. Like that's your one risk with Verstappen at this point. I think that he starts crashing again. But I like on pace, I like Verstappen way better than Russell.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think with this amount of money left, it makes sense to downgrade from Williams to Racing Bulls for everything that Williams said. Yeah. But I will say, like, I'm looking to run Williams.
Give me 5 races. I want Verstappen for sprints, or maybe give me Verstappen 3 races. We sit him out for Vegas, like we sit him out for the street course, and then we have him for the last 2 races.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say, unless like this situation where downgrading frees you up that money to jump up the rung on a driver, but like I think Williams is my favorite constructor this week. I think they're going to perform extremely strong. I think they're at a very good price. And again, like you're probably not looking at those top constructors for sprint weekends. And I think Williams, like I don't want anyone really under, like definitely not Alpine, definitely not the Saubers. I think Williams is probably a better Haas you can make a case for, but I think I'd go with Williams.
Williams is going to be more consistent than Haas, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, and they're cheaper. So I mean, I think you can if you're locked out of Williams, I don't think Haas is the worst decision in the world, but I think Williams is probably the best constructor at this point.
All right, Martin. I hope we helped you. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions. Also, come to the Mexico GP live stream and tell us how you did, because we're invested in your lineup. It's a good one.
Yeah,
All right, so
we'll be right back here a week from now, same time, probably.
Yeah. Tell your friends. Fee Fi Fo Fum. Great name. First of all. Second of all, you out of all of the live streams we've done all season, you win the best organization of a chat message to date. You have all of the information in one spot. So here we go. He has Norris 3 races left, Sainz 1 race left, Colapinto 2 races left, locked out of Oscar, Hulk, and Mercedes. 65 million, I think, to spend, 130.9 total. Drops don't bother me, holding on to first with 7.5 up in team value. All right, so you have Norris at 3 races left, Sainz 1, Cola 2. All right, so you need 2 more drivers. Oscar and Hulk are out. You have 65 left.
Do we need a constructor?
We do need I think we need a constructor. So let's do some math here. 65, because I feel like this person needs Verstappen. He's got Norris and Sainz.
Give me Max.
Yeah,
and if I have Max and Leclerc, then that's 56-1, which would leave you in like Sauber territory for constructor. We could compromise a bit. We could go Verstappen. If we go Verstappen, Sainz, that's 49-7.
He already has Sainz.
All right, he has Sainz.
So he has Norris, Sainz, and Colapinto. So I'm going to go with Colapinto for the talent driver and just stack the top of the roster. So I think we probably all agree that with 65 left, you need Verstappen. So I want to center around that. So we have 37.7 and change left to fill out the constructor and the other drivers. I think you probably could afford to go Sauber. I wouldn't really want to go Alpine for the price difference because it's not worth the points.
Yeah, I want to just float up on drivers, especially with sprints being a thing.
Yeah.
I would say Verstappen for either 3 or 5, depending on whether you want him out for Vegas or Abu Dhabi. And then Leclerc was the other driver, right?
Yeah.
I've forgotten what I said. Yeah. And then lock up Leclerc for probably 5, I would say. This is really just a matter of coordinating lockouts. And then I don't know what money that leaves you. Well, it depends on the race. You're going to have Sainz rolling off, and potentially maybe you have money for Piastri once he becomes available to you again.
Yeah.
So that's like, if you really would rather have Piastri than like Leclerc or Verstappen, you could take one of those guys for the one race that you have Piastri out, and then jump on Piastri again, and hope that lose value from a bad day. Like, I'd rather have Verstappen if I'm going to do a 1 race contract, just because he's going to have an easier time maintaining value because his teammate's not as good, and Verstappen's only 4th to begin with in terms of value.
And also to keep in mind with Piastri, I think McLaren's made it clear that they are prioritizing Norris. Like, Norris is a better driver anyway, but I think you're going to see some more aggressive strategies that might hurt Oscar in the race. That remains to be seen, but it sounds like that's what they are going to do everything they can to maximize Lando's points.
As long as Lando doesn't have a problem, he's always going to be the one getting the teammate points, because they will swap those drivers. 100%, they will swap them if it came to that.
And if there's an optimal pit strategy, like, Oscar's not getting it.
They will undercut Piastri.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that. They will undercut him, just like they did a couple of races ago.
Yeah, and Oscar it's a very expensive salary for somebody who is going to get thrown on the back burner by his own team. Probably still worth it, honestly. He's extremely strong, but that is something to keep in mind. You are giving up some points there.
Yeah, I would rather have Verstappen than Piastri for that reason. Yeah. Like, Piastri's best case scenario is Max runs into Lando.
Which
it could happen.
That might happen at one of these races. That'd be great.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Grayson, Should I cut anyone? I have Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, Hulk, Colapinto, and Williams. Have 2.5 million available for fees if needed. I don't think so. I think you got a pretty good setup here.
That's a
Williams
great
on the
lineup.
construct. Yeah. If you have two possibilities for your talent driver between Hulk and Colapinto, Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, all top drivers, I think you're sorted. I think good job this season on having building the budget to be able to have that team. That's all good. I don't think you need our help on that one.
Yeah, strong lineup. I mean, just watch FP1 and see if anything weird happens. But at this point in the week, that's about what I would be looking at.
Yeah, with all the information we have today, you have as good of a lineup as is possible in the app. Cool. Chris Jennings. I have Norris, Verstappen, and Albon. 77.5 million to play with Alonso, Colapinto, and Ferrari locked out. Curious as to your advice. More importantly, what contract lengths to go for. So just to hit on the contract lengths again for anyone joining the stream later is a 5-race contract signed now gets you 3 sprint races, right? So it depends on where you are in the league and what you're and how many points you're trying to maximize for. But right now is a time to think about a 5-race contract or thinking about what drivers you want on those sprint races for the next 5 races and doing shorter contracts to be able to swap in and swap out and managing that 1 race lockout. So it's a little hard to get exact advice without knowing where people are. But I would say Norris, Verstappen, and Albon, you're already in good spot. 77.5 million to play with. I don't know. It already sounds like I would be running Albon as your talent driver there. And if you have 77.5, I don't care that Ferrari's locked out.
Yeah, we can sign some top-notch drivers with that kind of money.
Yeah.
Like we could sign Piastri, we could sign Leclerc, and then have a constructor that's not terrible.
I like
77 million. You could sign Leclerc, Piastri, and Williams with that kind of money.
Yeah, because also I would take Leclerc over Piastri in this situation because the money is not the problem. It's only a 200K difference, but you'll get the extra teammate points by having Leclerc because Leclerc will likely outperform Sainz. Whereas if you sign Piastri, you won't get those teammate points.
77 million, you can sign them both and have money for Williams.
Good point, actually. Yeah,
like this guy's loaded.
They're good. Everyone in here's got good problems.
Yeah,
it's probably because they're taking all of our advice all season.
Yeah.
Except maybe mine. Like I've had a habit of being in the wrong place at the wrong time all season, and I'm not going to be defending this league title.
Yeah,
the streak's going to end at 2 years.
Yeah. All right, so I think we got you sorted out there, Chris. Andrew, no one says stroller coaster. Listen,
stroller coaster.
We don't want to say stroller coaster. It's just if you look at the contract value in the app on Stroll's page, it's a Six Flags ride. So the people who time it right benefit, but most people don't. It's like buying crypto. Everyone who knows people who lost money there.
They have a Ferris wheel like in the infields at Coda. Like there is a giant Ferris wheel. Maybe they need to build a stroller coaster in the infield.
Stroll is. I don't think Stroll is the worst thing in the world right now. The only thing that keeps me off of Stroll is that, like, why wouldn't you just use Colapinto? He's cheaper. But
exactly.
if you're locked out of Colapinto, like Stroll's 10-6. I don't know. I can't with this guy anymore. But like, I think he can be okay. Like, my guess is he will perform this weekend to where his salary will be higher when we're talking about him next week than it is now. I think he'll outperform where he's at in the game. I don't think he's going to be a huge like roster boost to anybody. But if you have, less than 11 million to spend on your last driver and Colapinto's locked out, I think Stroll might be your best choice down there. Definitely not using the Alpines, and maybe Sonoda, or I guess maybe Lawson if you're trying to take a chance. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Stroll's as bad as everyone else is saying he is. But yeah, I'm not going to be running to try and take him and put him on my team this weekend. But there are worse options.
Yeah, he's not at the top of my list either. Like if we look at the drivers cheaper than him, Colapinto's not a bad choice. Lawson is viable, especially with that average of 17th, like I said earlier in the show. I think like he can get propped up with improvement points just if other people have problems and he doesn't, which is very much a possibility.
And also looking down in that range, maybe not necessarily the best roster advice, but I'm excited that we get Magnussen with no more penalty points.
And doesn't have to care either because, like, realistically, he has 6 races left in his F1 career.
Oh, yeah.
Unless he's going to do a Ragunathon and pick himself up 2 bands in 1 year. This was an F2 driver who picked up 2 bands in 1 year that I'm referencing here.
I would love to see him go for it. Like, let's get some chaos back there.
Yeah.
Right.
Someone take over the questions for me. I have a slight distraction. I've got to answer,
thing.
but go for it.
Zach Taylor with the question. I've got Norris with 1 race left, Piastri with 1, Sainz with 1, Colapinto 4, Sauber 1, 12.5 to spend on the driver. You're thinking Lawson 5. Lawson 5 is okay. Lawson I like. I'm not so sure about 5. Like, I don't know that we need to do 5 because I don't know that Lawson's ceiling is all that high because racing bulls just aren't that fast. So maybe something more along the lines of like 3 races, assuming we want him for both sprints. Like maybe 3 races might work out a bit better. If we want to make a case for more races, we do have a street horse in that 4th race, so maybe there's chaos and other people crash and he doesn't, and he outperforms in Vegas. So I don't know that I need to lock up Lawson for a long contract, but at the price point you're looking at, I like Lawson as a choice. Any thoughts, Ryan?
All right, well, first of all, shout out Zach Taylor, coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. We got a celebrity in here. I think he's. Oh God, I just hate seeing Sauber in anyone's lineup. It just like throws me for a loop.
We've already recommended somebody take Sauber today. That's a load up on drivers.
Yeah, that's true. It's just like it just bugs me. Lost him for 5 races. Yeah, lost him for 5 races. Like, I'm never gonna tell you not to do that. I think we're getting near the end of the season. It's time to take some risks. It's time to try and get some points. And if people in your league are, maybe not looking at Lawson, look at the adoption rate. He's definitely someone that could help you jump up standings.
All right. Jamming out. I don't know. Whoever they are, they have Leclerc, Hamilton, Sainz, and Hulk locked. And they need a driver and constructor with 38 million, thinking Norris and Sauber. I like that. 38 million to fill a driver and a constructor.
Yeah, I guess if you're gonna go with Sauber, it might as well be so you can sign Norris.
And then
I think that's a good reason for it.
Lock Norris up for 5 races. 38 million. Williams, so we can't do Max and Williams. I was just looking at the numbers real quick. Could we do Max and Williams? Unfortunately, no. So then, lock up Norris, and then that actually leaves you with like 8 million and something. I guess so. Then you're just stuck with Sauber.
It's worth noting Sauber they weren't a complete dumpster in Singapore.
Yeah,
they had cars finished behind them.
That's a thing. So those cars had problems, and if Sauber is going to be last team running, question is how many cars are going to be running. The one thing that I would tell you to be careful of if you're signing Sauber, make sure that when they roll off, you have at least one other contract rolling off. I would hate for you to get stuck in the position where you can't afford any constructor, and you'd have to take a release fee on a driver so that you can have a complete lineup. Which you definitely want to have a complete lineup, otherwise your talent driver doesn't get the double points. And so if you're short 1 driver, you're actually short 2 drivers because of that double driver.
I think for that reason, I always try and have if something's going to be rolling off, I want to make sure it's more than. I never want to be in a position where I just have one contract ending, whether it's driver or constructor, and especially if it's an expensive one or a very cheap one. I always like to be able to play around a little bit and have maybe 2 to 3 rolling off at one time or another.
Okay. Guillermo correcting Norris for 3 races, 128 total budget. Piastri, Hamilton, Hulk, Albon, Williams as a potential lineup. Then a bunch of Russell, Verstappen, Sainz, Cole, Pinto, V car blocked. Hulk versus Albon, talent driver. Hulkenberg is like they're not. Neither choice is bad. I think what we've seen so far is maybe there's a slightly higher ceiling with Hulkenberg and the Haas. That said, neither choice is bad.
I lean Albon at price. I have them pretty equally rated, and Albon's cheaper.
As he's thinking of signing both of those drivers. So then the question is who gets the star. So Piastri, Hamilton, Hulk, Albon, Williams.
Whoever looks better in FP1. Seriously, yeah. I know it's a cop-out answer, but it really is just whoever looks better in FP1, because at this point in the week, it's, I think, pretty close to a coin flip.
Something else I might do, like with your driver lineup, I might consider, instead of Hulk, maybe going for something a bit more gambly, maybe going for like a Lawson and then freeing up money for a better top driver. So instead of Hamilton, maybe now I'm affording somebody like a Norris, which I think Norris is going to be way better than Hamilton. Yeah. So that's my thought there. Or even like if I'm picking between Piastri and Norris, I'm picking Norris for reasons we said before. Like Norris is getting prioritized, and papaya rules.
Papaya.
That's the phrase they're using.
Yeah, I think a lot of these races down the stretch here for people's points in their standings are going to come down to how you feel about Ferrari versus Mercedes. I think they're so level, and it's going to depend on it like track by track, and they're all pretty expensive drivers that most people can afford to roster at this point. And it's going to be, do you want a Leclerc? Do you want one of the Mercedes? Like, what are you going to do with Sainz versus the Mercedes? I think that's a really big point we're going to be talking about on every show.
I'm going to give the edge to Ferrari over Mercedes, and here's why. Take a look at the constructor standings. Mercedes is essentially locked into 4th place unless Ferrari just never shows up the rest of the season. Mercedes is locked into 4th place. Like they have like 250 points on the next team. Ferrari is only 34 points out of 2nd. So in terms of who might consider continuing to bring upgrades, it would definitely be Ferrari. Mercedes has nothing to gain. Like they would be fully focused on next year's car. Ferrari, like if Red Bull slips up, Ferrari could steal 2nd in the constructors. So like I think Ferrari's going to be more likely to keep fighting than Mercedes. And I think we saw a little bit of that before we hit this last break. Like Ferrari probably has a little bit more fight in them.
Good points.
So, FIFA FOFUM in a family league. Okay, so bragging rights. That's the most important prize of all, bragging rights.
That's true.
Why is my scroll jumping? Let's see. So, jamming out Leclerc 1 race. Okay, so clarifying the contract lengths. Leclerc 1, Hamilton 1. Norris 5, Sauber for 1. Okay, we actually addressed that point. So I love Norris 5. Sauber for 1 is okay, given that you have Leclerc and Hamilton both coming off and Hulk coming off as well. That way you don't end up in that jam where you're forced to take a release. So that won't happen to you, thankfully. I had that happen to me actually with Sargent earlier this year, which was unfortunate.
Contract management's important down the stretch.
I hope I'm saying that name right. Sorry if I butcher anybody's names. They have Lando, Russell, Alex, Max, Franco, and Racing. I assume that's Racing Bulls locked out. So those are the lockouts. 51 million. Okay, so 51 million. McLaren for 5, Gasly for 2, Stroll for 1. Uh, I would actually flip that with all these sprints happening. I would much rather have a driver who's going to give us a bunch of points, like say, okay, you have Lando, somebody like Leclerc and Norris or Verstappen. I'd much rather have one of those guys than have McLaren and eating a bunch on a constructor when we've got 3 sprints ahead of us.
On the Gasly
I
point,
don't want
think
Gasly.
yeah, I was gonna
At
say
that price point, there's better choices at that price point.
yeah.
Colapinto's locked out, but I like Lawson better than Gasly. We
I
know
like
what
Tsunoda
Gasly
better
is.
than
We know what
Gasly
that
too.
car is. You were saying, Ryan?
I like Tsunoda better than Gasly too.
That too, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Tsunoda could actually make it to Q3. Alpine's not making it to Q3. What happens on race day, it depends on a lot of things. But I think Racing Bulls do have a higher ceiling than Alpine, and I think Alpine's been in decline, and especially now they're going to give up on making their own power units with the 26 rules. So I think Alpine's going to be mailing it in, honestly.
Yeah. I've been hating on Alpine all year, and I'm not going to stop now. I'm carrying this thing through to the finish line.
I wish they would just sell the Andretti. It'd solve so many problems. All right. So Brooke with a question. Norris and Piastri can take 2 of the following drivers: Hamilton, Russell, Sainz. Which 2 do you take out of those 3? That's a good question. What do you guys think?
I think definitely. I'd say you split them. You go one of the Mercedes, and then you go Sainz. Which Mercedes is? I don't know. I always say I look at them pretty much exactly the same, and I usually just take whoever is cheaper because I feel like their value might go up more.
And that is the interesting question. I don't want 2 teammates in this scenario because only one of them is going to get teammate points. Russell is slightly more expensive. I may lean Russell just because of the lame duck situation with Hamilton. These are his last 6 races with Mercedes. And sometimes drivers end up more out of the loop as their time gets closer to the end. And maybe the guy who's sticking around is more likely to get prioritized. So I think Russell has a small edge there.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think Russell's a choice there. But why not Verstappen, Brooke? What's stopping you from that? If you have a follow up there, because you said you have Norris and Piastri, and you could afford Russell and Sainz. Part of me is wondering what the rest of your lineup looks like, because I might want to go Verstappen, Sainz, Colapinto, or or Verstappen, Sainz, then like an underpriced talent driver who might be doing well, like a Lawson or a Colapinto, or depends on your budget. So I think if you're still around, give us a little bit of a follow up there, because we might also just make a hard left turn for you.
Yeah, like we could just say like Max Checo or something. Like, I don't know the rest of your lineup. Like, I don't know who you might consider releasing, but like there's some more creative options available as well. But like what the question that we're faced with, like I think the answer is probably Sainz and Russell from where I'm sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Martin was like 100K short of Verstappen and Racing Bull, so Russell and Williams it is. Yeah, I think that was an earlier question. Like I'd much rather have Verstappen than Russell. Like I would even trade down to like I'd rather have Alpine or Sauber. At that point, I would just have Sauber and Verstappen. I think Verstappen's going to be so much more valuable than Russell as we head down the stretch.
There are times when it's worth it to eat a drop fee, and we're going to see a lot of those coming up here with only a few races left. And if you can eat a drop fee to upgrade from Russell to Verstappen, I think that's worth it for sure. Again, wait till after FP1 to do it, but I would say that's definitely worth it.
Yeah. Let's see, Evan, happy to see me again. Happy to see you in the chat. Happy to see all of you in the chat. And if you're happy to see us, hit that like button. Let's see if the algorithm knows that you're happy to see us, and we're happy to see you. And then maybe we make some more friends in this wonderful game that we have here.
That is a professional segue right there.
Yeah,
I felt like I was listening to a real podcast.
it comes with a small amount of experience. We got like 5 minutes to go here, so like maybe another question or two, and then like a couple of quick like cheap lineups maybe. Like here's a 103 million team here. Hey on plays just clarifying. So sorry to get more facts. Well, one race left: Hulk, Gaz, Ocon, Sonoda, McLaren, yeah, Hamilton locked. Yeah, so drop McLaren and add Sauber. Yeah, like if you're gonna sign a top driver, yeah, like drop McLaren and add Sauber, and then lock up your good driver for as long as possible. Rumors of Mick to Audi. Yeah, there's a lot of drivers rumored for that last spot at what's currently called Sauber, what will be Audi, and that'll be interesting drama that'll probably spill into the off season. F1 Mafia starting Norris, Sainz, Max, Colapinto, Hamilton, Williams. Would I swap any of these 4 drivers? I love that lineup.
Yeah, he's set.
That's my opinion. You're good to go.
Yep. Watch practice. Like sound like a broken record, but see what practice does. Other than that, looks good.
Yeah, someone thinking like Max might be overvalued, where balance is important, like Austin. That's an interesting point, Mark. And yeah, you said it best. Like, what happens in Friday practice? All right, so maybe it's time to just go into a cheap lineup.
Well, actually, wait. Mark Zuckerberg is in the chat. I don't know if you saw
Yes,
that.
that's why I was addressing. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's that Mark Zuckerberg though.
I'm sure it is. So we got him and Zach Taylor in the chat. We got like heavy hitters today.
All the famous people playing GridRival.
Yeah. Mark, email us, support@GridRival.com. I have to talk to you about our Facebook ads. So please reach out.
Yeah. Okay. So what are our thoughts here regarding a $100 million lineup?
$100 million lineup. We're doing it.
Yeah, we got like 3 minutes left.
Let's do it.
I mean,
Which, if you're playing our daily fantasy game, if you're in the certain parts of the U.S., 100 million is what you get, and it's for one race. So I think Checo's a huge bargain if we're talking about a daily lineup. So like I'm thinking more like a Sainz, Checo, that gets us to like 41.2. I think I take one more blue chip driver, probably Norris.
I'm either running Norris or Verstappen as my blue chip, and I'm not going to look at. I think Leclerc's overpriced if you just have 100 billion. I mean, we've talked about why Oscar's not the guy. Mercedes and Ferrari, there are questions, but Sainz is worth it at his value. So I think you're either going Norris, expecting him to just lap the field again, which is entirely possible, just snoozes us all, or it's Verstappen. You save a couple million to use somewhere else, and you probably still get a very strong showing.
I was able to make an exact $100 million lineup with $0 left in the bank, and it's not terrible. So you have Colapinto for your talent driver, Perez, Alonso, Sainz, Norris. The only one I don't love there is Alonso, but
who's your constructor?
Who's my constructor? Oh no, Fooey! I skipped the constructor. That's 100 million on just drivers.
That was just my thinking there. So
what a fail.
Let's see. So if I go,
don't do what Michael just did.
How did that just happen?
Norris would be 29.5. Sainz would put me at 51.9. Checo would put me at 70.7. Colapinto 80.7. Lawson 89.2, and then my constructor would then have to be Alpine. So that's my thinking there as far as my quick and dirty $100 million lineup that I just came up with in like 30 seconds. And like I could play with that a little bit. Like maybe I swap Norris for Max, and I can aim a little bit higher with constructor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think Sainz and Checo might be the bargains among the top teams if you're on a budget, whether you're playing daily or whether you're just playing on a budget, like some of our players are.
Yep. Mike had a question there. Just to close us out, I know we're at time, but what would you say is a healthy points lead right now? So you said at this point in the year, how big of a points lead would you consider relatively safe? Obvious caveats applied. I would personally say 300. I would feel a little bit safer right now than anything less than that. Just because like a top lineups in the game right now are going to be scoring anything between 950 and 1100 points for the weekend. So if I have a 300-point lead and I'm confident in my lineup, I'm not worried about losing my spot immediately, but I am worried about losing my spot over 2 races.
And we're at the point where there's going to be a lot less variance, just in terms of everyone in first place right now is probably looking at a minimum of $130 million lineup, and it's going to be very hard to put a stinker lineup out there when you have that. Whereas early in the season, everyone's working with 100 to 105, and you're scraping the bargain bin for that bottom of the lineup.
Yeah, your only potential curveballs at this point are like a first turn pileup somewhere,
Right.
like at Vegas in particular, or if you get some weather somewhere, like maybe Brazil. Which, like, if you look at the remaining, like we have like 3 races that are in the desert. The weather's looking pretty good here in Texas this weekend, so like that leaves Mexico and Brazil for potential weather chaos. So, yeah, and I think we're at time.
Yeah, or anyone getting swept up in like the K-Mag vortex.
That too.
Yep. All right, we're getting told to wrap it up, so we're gonna have to end it here. Again, thanks everyone for coming. If you see Ross or I in Austin, come say hi, and we'll see you at the Mexico GP next. Okay, so I'm gonna take